Hey there, and welcome to Module 7 in the Soma School Deep Coaching Intensive. What we're going to look at today is the concept of awareness in action, bringing some of the theory of body awareness into practical steps, teaching you how you can work through a pretty intuitive framework using the MAIA assessment that we've talked about earlier. So as we've mentioned before, time and time again, it all starts with awareness. And the reason why is simple. Awareness creates space for choice. Choice, in turn, is what leads to change. If we do not have awareness over something, we do not have a choice in it. And of course, if we can't make a different choice, we have no control over the change that we're hoping to make. Now, this may sound like semantics, it may sound like philosophy, but I promise you this. If something is flying under the level of a client's conscious processing, if they have no conscious awareness over if something hurts, how something moves, then they're unable to make any change about that. So one of our biggest jobs is to bring more to their awareness and more often. And there's a pretty simple way we can go about doing it. Now, the importance of this, again, cannot be understated because we move and live in accordance with our self-image. That is, our image of ourselves, our perception of ourselves dictates, of course, our movements. The way that our brain maps out our bodies dictates how we will move and what will move when we move. And the image we hold of ourselves dictates how we live our lives. What we perceive as possible, what we perceive as beyond our limits. And so it follows that if we change the self-image, we change the person. If we expand somebody's self-image, help them bring awareness to more of themselves, a more accurate representation of themselves, they become more of themselves in the world. And at the root of it is this. This is something that we can communicate so well to our clients once we have a better understanding of it ourselves. As we've talked about before, movement is a neuromusculoskeletal event. Movement is an emergent phenomenon, and it is determined and dictated by this sensory-motor feedback loop within us. So our bodies, our joints, our myofascial system, our musculoskeletal system, our skin, all of that body stuff, in air quotes, is sending sensory information up to the brain, the central nervous system. The central nervous system, in turn, sends motor outputs to the body to organize movements based on that sensory information. This ongoing feedback loop is what lets us know, whoa, that stove is hot, I better take my hand off of it. So it lets us know, oh, it's chilly in here. I better move, or I better put on another layer. And this loop is always going on in varying levels of quality. For most people we work with, this sensory motor dialogue is going on about as well as a conversation through tin cans and a string. Our body is sending very muffled signals up to the central nervous system. And the central nervous system can only base its outputs on the quality of information coming in. If there is crappy information coming into the system, we will get crappy motor outputs by default. If, however, we can improve the quality of information coming in, if we can improve the inputs within this system by improving body awareness and sensory perception, we automatically improve quality of movement, because we have changed the self-image, therefore enacting a change in the person. So how do we go about doing this? This is where it gets a little bit tricky because there are so many different ways that we might practice this, but a big part of it is intuitive, and a big part of it is informed. Again, there's no single right way. This is where the intuitive side of this practice comes in. When in doubt, when you're working with someone, just be present to them. Again, we can fall back on our improv rules and say, you as a coach or as a practitioner or as a teacher, it's your job to model this by noticing more. Tune into how they're acting, what they're saying, what they're not saying. Notice more about the situation. Let go. Let go of expectations about how that session should look. Let go of your biases and assumptions around what they are thinking, what they are feeling. Use everything. Use everything in your past experience to help inform how you work with this person right here, right now. What does your gut tell you, based on what you've seen and experienced in the past? Very often, when it comes to facilitating awareness, going with your gut may be the most important thing you can do. Again, you don't have to necessarily explain how something works to know that it works. So even if you just have a hunch as to how you can help someone bring more awareness to themselves, it is okay to trust that hunch, to go with your gut here. So again, when in doubt, notice more, let go, use everything. The rules of improv are the rules of movement, are the rules of life. But we can inform that intuition based on best practices, based on the available research and literature. And one of the best tools out there that I've found is the multidimensional assessment of interoceptive awareness, or the MAIA. Now, the MAIA is a tool, of course. It's not an end-all be-all, but it can really help inform our practice quite a bit. It can act both as a baseline assessment and a measure of progress. It's something where month after month, or every 3 months, whatever blocks you tend to work within, you might have someone reassess on this measure and see what has changed. You will be surprised at how much can change in a short amount of time. So again, the MAIA can both inform the root of inquiry, and it can inform the conversations we have with particular clients. So I want to walk you through this assessment and show you each of the categories, and how the categories, the questions within them, can help inform how we practice building awareness with our students and our clients. All in all, there are 8 categories and 32 questions. There is a lot of material to cover. So let's dive right in. The first category that we work through in the MAIA is noticing. The questions within this are, when I am tense, I notice where tension is located on my body. And if you haven't seen it, it's important to note that each of these statements is measured on a scale of 0 to 5, from never to always. So when I'm tense, I notice where the tension is located in my body. A student might mark down anywhere between never and always. I notice when I am uncomfortable in my body. I notice where in my body I am comfortable. I notice changes in my breathing, such as whether it slows down or speeds up. And you might notice that based on these first statements, these can be a practice all on their own. Even if you don't take someone through the MAIA on its own, you can use these first 4 questions as a very basic baseline body scan for the person you're working with. You might ask, hey Joe, hey Jim, hey Laura, when you're tense, where do you feel that tension in your body? Right here, right now, as we start our session today. Do you notice any places that feel tense? And they might say, my neck, my hips, my low back, whatever the case may be. Their gut reaction can help inform your gut reaction. as to what is most important, what is most pressing on that given session. Again, when in doubt, give them one thing that could help relieve some of that tension. They will leave that session better than when they walked in. And that is the goal of every session. You might also ask, where do you feel uncomfortable in your body? In addition to that tension, are there places that just feel distinctly uncomfortable? Let them come up with whatever answer they come up with there. Then you might ask, as a bit of contrast, hey, are there places where you feel comfortable in your body? I know you said your left shoulder is uncomfortable. Are there other places that are comfortable? And what I will often do at this point, if they have an area of the body that feels uncomfortable and an area that feels comfortable, I'll have them ping-pong their awareness back and forth between those two areas of their body. I might ask about the qualities that make something comfortable. What do you notice in your ankle that feels so comfortable? Well, it feels released, it feels relaxed, it feels connected, it feels solid and weighty. Okay, and how does that contrast to what you feel in that shoulder? Well, it's tense, it feels like a brick, it's rigid, it's painful, it can't release. Whatever they say. We learn so much through contrast. Our nervous system, in particular, learns so much through contrasting sensations. Simply guiding someone into shifting their awareness from comfort to discomfort within their own bodies can help alleviate that discomfort. Their body will learn to reorganize through contrasting sensory information. And that is so important for us to keep in mind as coaches, as teachers, as practitioners. We do not have to overthink it. Simply asking them to tune in, to notice more, to let go, to use everything, those lessons can carry us so far within each practice. And then, of course, we can ask things like, well, hey, what do you notice about your breathing? So again, these are the questions within the noticing category. And whether we use them as an assessment or not, they can be a beautiful avenue to begin a body awareness practice to help people notice more about themselves. Again, this is the foundation of a movement practice, is bringing awareness to what is going on, developing a richer map of the territory that we're going to be navigating. And you can simply say to people, because a lot of people will be unfamiliar with awareness practices at this level, you can say, well, you wouldn't go on a long road trip without a map or a GPS. So we're going to do the same thing with our bodies and our movements. We're going to tune in, see if we can map the territory so that we can navigate it more smoothly. Now the second category here is not distracting. What we're looking at here is how much a person will distract themselves from unpleasant or uncomfortable sensations. And this is important to know because we want to know what a person's response is going to be to discomfort, which they may very well come up against as we work with them. We want to know how they respond to this. The statements within this category are, I don't notice or I ignore physical tension or discomfort until they become more severe. I distract myself from sensations of discomfort. When I feel pain or discomfort, I try to power through it. Now notice some of the language here. People who score highly or rate themselves highly in these areas often have a bit of an avoidance to their sensory experience, or they try to overcome, they power through whatever is going on. There's a certain type of personality that this will match with. I'll let you figure that out on your own, but you know these people well. And intuitively, you probably know how to handle working with these people as well. This area, this category, these questions, they cue us to be careful when guiding a movement. We may guide someone through a process and say, okay, go at 50% intensity. Don't push into pain. And very often, people will still push into pain. They will do the exact opposite of what you just advised them not to do. So again, we can use this as just a bit of information for us to keep in the back of our minds. If you know someone is prone to pushing through pain or distracting themselves from discomfort, you might intentionally ask them to slow a movement down, reduce the scale of that movement. Be very mindful about when and where and how things get uncomfortable or painful. If they reach overhead and feel pain, don't have them hang from a bar and power through that pain. Ask them to explore the boundary of that discomfort. Explore the boundary of that pain. How much can you move before something starts to hurt? When you get to that boundary, what else can move in your body? Or when you get to that point, can you just tune in and sit with those sensations and what comes up for you then? Again, these are all different avenues that we can work through. Some might make more sense based on the work you do, based on your modality. But no matter what modality we work within, if we are working with bodies, we want to know how often people will distract them or how prone they are to distracting themselves from discomfort or pushing through pain. And of course, this opens up an opportunity for us to educate the people we're working with on pain. Educate them on that sensory motor dialogue. Teach them a bit about how their own body works. So many of us are brought up in the no pain, no gain culture that when we hear someone say, don't push into pain, it's discordant. It doesn't mesh with maybe their model of reality. And so this is a chance to teach them a bit more about how their body works. Again, knowledge is power. The more they know and the more they can apply about their body, the better off they'll be. So go ahead, teach them about the sensory motor dialogue of the body. Teach them about what happens when you push into pain. We've talked in the past about sensory motor amnesia, which can crop up through disuse, through pain. Teach them that when they push into pain, they're essentially teaching their body that that is a painful movement. And then whether or not they recover from the injury, their body can remember pain within those ranges of motion. Or teach them that if they move into discomfort, they're essentially sending poor quality information to their central nervous system, which can reduce their movement performance down the road. This is especially helpful if we work in a performance setting, where people are prone to push themselves quite a bit. We can bring it to their attention that they are in effect sabotaging themselves when they go into that. That if they could find more ease of movement, they will be able to work at a higher level. They will be able to work both smarter and harder if they start working with their nervous systems, with their living bodies. Not worrying is the next category. The first statement is, when I feel physical pain, I become upset. I start to worry that something is wrong if I feel any discomfort. I can notice an unpleasant body sensation without worrying about it. These give us insight into how much we might challenge someone and how much to soften. We know when we go through this that if someone is feeling pain during a session, they may have an adverse emotional response to it. They may shut down psychologically if they come across a movement that is challenging, uncomfortable, painful. It's important for us to know this as coaches, as facilitators, as teachers, because then we know that if they are prone to worry, if they are prone to anxiety or becoming upset, we want to be judicious and cautious when we work with them. Not overly cautious, but we want to provide maybe more alternatives, more options, progressions and regressions of movements. Again, to help meet people where they are at. Our nervous systems learn best through comfort. If we can keep people comfortable throughout the process, they will learn new ways of moving and new ways of being with more ease. And of course, this also offers an opportunity to help them develop self-care strategies of just checking in with themselves. If they are someone who suffers from chronic pain or repeat pain, you might invite them to notice when and where and what is going on when they feel that pain. To sit with that and tune into the physical sensations. Again, checking in, bringing awareness. The more frequently we do this, the more information we give ourselves about our self-image, the more we refine that mental map of self. And when we do that, that is when we can make very massive changes in a short amount of time. And so again, this is an opportunity to empower them to take some of this practice home with themselves. Check in with their physical state, their emotional state, their thought process, whenever they come up against discomfort or pain. Attention regulation is the next category. The statements here are, I can pay attention to my breath without being distracted by things happening around me. I can maintain awareness of my inner bodily sensations, even when there is a lot going on around me. When I'm in a conversation with someone, I can pay attention to my posture. I can return to body awareness if I'm distracted. I can refocus my attention from thinking to sensing my body. I can maintain awareness of my whole body even when a part of me is in pain or discomfort. I'm able to consciously focus on my body as a whole. Now, the common theme throughout these is that we know that if someone has a hard time tuning into body awareness, tuning into their internal sensations, we can invite them throughout the session to have a little check-in here and there. As you're deadlifting, just check in with what you notice going on in your low back. As you finish up a set, does it feel like your low back did the brunt of the work? Or did you feel it more in the rest of the posterior chain? Did you feel it throughout your legs, through your butt? As you're going through any movement practice, if someone has a hard time maintaining and regulating their attention, simply pepper in opportunities throughout the session, or cue them as they're going through a movement to notice how something feels. To just check in with what they notice going on in their own bodies. Again, if they check in as they're going through the movement, they are remapping their concept of their body going through that movement. They are refining the information going into the central nervous system, even as they refine the motor outputs. They're improving the overall quality of that sensory motor dialogue. So we know that if someone is a bit of, if they're having a hard time maintaining attention and tuning into their bodies, that we need to pay extra special attention and make an extra effort to guide them and facilitate that process throughout the session. Now the next category is emotional awareness. I notice how my body changes when I am angry. When something is wrong in my life, I can feel it in my body. I notice that my body feels different after a peaceful experience. I notice that my breathing becomes free and easy when I feel comfortable. I notice how my body changes when I feel happy or joyful. These elements of emotional awareness can really be an indicator of how we might converse with a given person. If someone goes through and answers these questions and says they never notice these things, you have a pretty good idea that they're going to think you're a little bit crazy if you start talking about feelings in the middle of their workout or in the middle of that session. If someone has, however, a very real identification with their internal experience and their feelings, with their body as an emoting vessel, then we know we can talk a bit more about emotions, the psychological process, maybe the big picture context of their life as well. This is something I look for quite a bit when I'm working with a new student. I want to really tune into how they relate to their body in terms of their emotional experience. And we'll talk about at the end ways we might bridge that gap for people who have a very hard time relating bodies and emotions. So there are practices that can make this a little bit easier. But do know that if someone is having a very hard time identifying or bridging the gap between bodies and emotions, if you start talking about the emotional aspects of a physical practice with them, they're going to have a very difficult time relating. Again, we always have to build a bridge and meet people where they're at, then guide them a little bit further. Self-regulation is the next category. When I feel overwhelmed, I can find a calm place inside. When I bring awareness to my body, I feel a sense of calm. I can use my breath to reduce tension. When I'm caught up in thoughts, I can calm my mind by focusing on my body or breathing. So we can look at these questions and this category in general to think of how might we help them live more in their bodies throughout the rest of their life. Again, if we know that a movement practice and a life practice are not two separate things, we can look at these as different avenues to ways we can help them even outside of our sessions. This can really inform the conversations we have with people as we help them come up with self-care strategies. How do we help them live a more embodied life? How do we help them use themselves as a resource, as a pool to draw from, to enact changes in the rest of their lives? Again, for some people, we might bridge this gap by saying, hey, did you know when you tune into your breath, it can help you reduce stress? When you're feeling strung out, did you know that checking in with where you feel your weight can help you feel better? Over time and with practice, they will own this more and more. But again, at the start, it's important that we help cultivate this self-care practice for them. Body listening is the next category. I listen for information from my body about my emotional state. When I'm upset, I take time to explore how my body feels. I listen to my body to inform me about what to do. In these questions, we start to learn what's their attitude to their body. Do they view their body as a resource, as an ally, as a tool, as something separate from themselves? We learn what their relationship is to their body. And when I go through and look at body listening as a category and I look at these questions, I think to the Gestalt idea of looking at the relationship we have with our bodies in terms of expectations. What expectations do I have of my body? What expectations does my body have of me? Are those two categories in alignment, or is there a split? Again, we can look to this category and these questions as a pretty good indicator of what their relationship is to their body. Now, this last one may be one of the more important. They are all important, but this one stands out as a particular red flag for me. I keep a very careful eye on this, as it really informs how I'll proceed with a given client or student. I'm at home in my body. I feel my body is a safe place. I trust my body's sensations. Now, even before we talk about this further, what's your gut instinct here? If someone scores very low or ranks themselves low in these statements, if they never feel at home in their body, if they never feel that their body is a safe place, if they never trust their body's sensations, what does that tell you? What might be going on here? Contrast that with someone who always feels at home in their body, always feels their body's a safe place, always trusts their body's sensations. You see, we paint a very different picture here. And so I look at answers to these questions or scores on these statements as potential red flags that I may in fact need to refer this person out. This may be above my pay grade. Or it may simply inform how I begin conversations about bodies, how I cue movements, even how I talk about movements and their bodies. It lets me know that I need to be very judicious with my language and the impact that my language is having on that person. If someone does not feel at home in their body, if they do not feel safe, if they don't trust their body's sensations, it does not even make sense for me to start with an awareness practice. You can think about it this way. If someone is afraid of the basement, if they don't think the basement is a safe place, and they don't trust the basement, you're not going to ask them to go down into the basement to change the laundry. Having someone begin a body awareness, mindfulness practice if they do not feel safe or at home is a very slippery slope and a very dangerous idea. So this is something that we need to be just aware of. There's a possibility out there in the world. So what are some of the practices we can work through when we go through and try to cultivate awareness with people? One of the easiest that I've found is a sensory scan. We simply invite someone to tune into, what do you see around you? What do you hear around you? What do you smell around you? Can you taste anything? And what can you touch or what can you feel around you? You might begin with these 5 senses because for many people, this is a pretty obvious, pretty easy to dip into category. I often like to take it a step further and try to use this as a bridge to the emotional experience. And so I'll ask someone to tell me a story about their favorite taste. Or tell me a story. What's a memory about your favorite smell? What's a memory about your favorite touch or sensation? People will light up as they tell these stories and share these memories. And it can get the wheels turning and start to build a bridge between their sensations and their mental or their emotional experience. So that's what I call a sensory story. Now, for body awareness practices, we can also go through a body scan. As we talked about in the noticing category, you might ask where you feel tension, where you feel comfortable or uncomfortable. I like to ask about where do you feel your weight underneath you? Are things evenly balanced side to side? Again, help them draw a map of their body in space. And we can do this in a number of different positions. Of course, we have constructive resting position as a good option. An option that can be especially helpful in reducing excess tension. We have kneeling, or the seiza sit, where people kneel on the tops of their feet. It's going to be a bit unfamiliar for Western bodies, but it's a phenomenal way to help them bring awareness to how they organize in the vertical, in the pull of gravity. And we can accentuate that even further with a standing awareness practice. If you have someone stand in place for 5 minutes, they will very quickly get a very real sense of where they're holding tension and where they could let go. So again, there are many different options here, many different avenues. And the beautiful thing about an awareness practice for us is that it's often a positive feedback loop. Finer awareness, a refined map, helps them notice more. Because again, a lot of the changes that we'll be creating through the work are small changes. They're subtle changes at first. But as they improve their awareness, they will notice these changes more and more. They will get more and more excited about the work because they'll have more and more feedback that something is happening for them. So of course they will have more willingness to dive into the work as well. So, very important for us to keep in mind that awareness pays dividends. It has a huge return on investment in terms of time. And of course, coming to terms with body awareness is the foundation of just about every physical practice we could explore. The more someone can bring attention to the sensations within their body, the more they'll improve the sensory information going to their central nervous system. And of course, they will refine and improve the quality of their movements as well. Again, it all circles back to refining and improving the self-image. If you change someone's image, if you expand and improve their image, you change how they move and you change how they live. So, within your personal practice and within the work you do with clients, what ways can you think of to bring more awareness into that practice? And how does the information we've covered today change or inform how you might work with people moving forward?